Hey everyone, it's Bob with another FINOP Controller webcast. This week we're going to continue our discussion of the customer reserve debits, lines 11, 12, and 13. They're related to stock borrows, fails to deliver, and the margin held at Options Clearing Corp. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to discuss what's a stock borrow, what's a fail to deliver, what's the difference between a fail to deliver and a fail to deliver CNS, what to include when a firm's customers write options at Options Clearing Corp, and how much to reduce the total debits before calculating the reserve deposit requirement. Quick review of the categories. On the customer side, line item number 1, that's cash that we receive from the customer, either from deposits or from sales of their securities. 2, 3, and 4, that's cash we received by using the customer's securities. Number 5 is cash we received when we made short sales to the customer. And lines 6, 7, 8, and 9 are items that are in suspense accounts, and they are basically charges for efficiency. On the debit side, we've already discussed in earlier webcasts the debits in the margin and cash accounts. As I said earlier, we're going to be discussing stock borrows, fails to deliver, and the margin held at Options Clearing Corp. Disclaimers and notes. Again, this presentation is for educational purposes only. It's not legal advice. If you're doing actual reserve calculation, I'm going to refer you to the FINRA website where you can look for interpretations for financial and operational rules. And I think the best way to make use of this presentation is to review it versus your firm's calculation and compare the items. One other thing to be aware of with this presentation is that we're going to use the reduction method. And the reduction or takeaway method starts with the fail to deliver and stock borrow amounts on the balance sheet and then reduces them by subtracting items that are not related to customer credit balances or their additional charges. All right, let's talk about customer reserve line 11, stock borrow. One of the ways that a firm ends up borrowing shares is when a customer sells without owning a stock. That's called shorting the stock. In that particular instance, the firm has to borrow shares to make a delivery. In addition, the customer might have sold the shares, and if they don't deliver those shares by settlement date, then the BD will borrow shares to make the delivery. To borrow the shares, the broker-dealer gives the contra-broker cash as collateral, and now the firm has a receivable while the contra-broker has a payable, also known as a stock loan. So, for line 11, include all the borrows. Now reduce the amount by the deficits, which are contract values greater than market value per contract. And then using the allocation report, remove all stock borrow balances that do not allocate to customer short positions. Turning our attention to fail to delivers, that occurs when the firm doesn't deliver the shares on settlement date to the contra broker. Now, if they don't deliver the shares, the firm will have a receivable from the other BD. That receivable is called a fail to deliver and is included in the reserve calc as a debit. The individual contract values are included and not the net amount per contra broker dealer. In other words, don't sum up the fails to deliver and fails to receive due to a single broker dealer and use that amount. You have to use the individual contract values. Now, when the firm has the shares and it's ready to make the delivery, the contra broker dealer will send the money. There is a different type of fail to deliver, and that's CNS, which stands for Continuous Net Settlement. This is a program that's run by NSCC, and NSCC handles most of the clearing of equities and listed bonds and unit investment trusts in the United States. Now with CNS, NSCC will step into the middle of a transaction, and both broker-dealers settle with NSCC and not each other. So for NSCC, they'll net down all of the firm's contracts for a particular security to a single receive or deliver, and that's going to reduce the number of security movements. And on a daily basis, NSCC will mark each net position to market and require additional deposits if necessary. So what causes a firm to fail to deliver securities? Well, this can occur when the customer holds the security and hasn't given it to the broker-dealer. The security is in transfer and the shares have not been received from the transfer agent. This usually occurs when the security is either paper or it's a unique security that is dependent upon having the name of the customer on the security. The shares are held as collateral in a bank loan or they're out on stock loan. There might be a recall that's already occurred. The firm has not yet received the shares. Any type of delivery that would create or increase a possession or control deficiency, or in some instances when the receiving broker-dealer has not set up the security in its system, which prevents it from receiving the shares. Line 12 fails to deliver. What should we include? Well, include all the contract values that fail to deliver. And from these amounts, exclude any contract values outstanding 30 days or longer. Or the fail to deliver CNS. If you're using the NSCC reports, be aware that they're from NSCC's viewpoint. In other words, that a credit balance from the report is a debit balance for the firm. For a CNS fail to deliver, there's no need to add contract deficits as they're marked to market daily. And then once you've got those, you're going to subtract off any security allocations, and we're going to take a look at those on the next slide. Fails to deliver and fails to receive, fails to deliver versus securities loan. Both of these items, you're going to take a net capital charge of 1% if you're calculating your net capital using the alternative method. Moving on to line 13, what's the required margin or collateral held at OCC? Well, you're going to include the lesser of the required margin or the customer collateral held at Options Clearing Corp. And if you think about it, on the credit side, you've included the same amounts. And what this really does is just make sure that all of this has been accounted for. Final calculation process. You want to sum the following, and that's lines 11 through 14. And then you're going to subtract off 3% of the total, or only 1% if your net capital is computed using the basic method. Once you've determined this amount, then that's what you're going to be able to use to reduce the reserve formula credits. And then from there, you're going to be able to calculate your deposit amount. So that's it for this week's webcast. If you have any questions, send me an email at rmmilburnconsulting.com. Thanks for your time this week.